what is the worst addiction to quit? And I literally went through the whole list, from sugar to caffeine to TikTok scrolling to gaming to weed to smoking to alcohol to watching adult media content to attachment to other people, procrastination, all sorts of pharmaceutical drugs, pills, Netflix. If I'm really honest, I'm not addicted to any of that. And how is that possible? And what is life without all these things that are so common? In fact, there seems to be a popular consensus among the majority of people that everyone has to be addicted to something. Whether it's something that is perceived as positive maybe, such as working or fitness. Well, it could be that if you're compulsively working because you're addicted to the release of dopamine, then you could maybe argue that you are addicted to something like that, or fitness. Or maybe you are procrastinating your true purpose in life by going to fitness. Well, that could qualify as a bad habit, but it would obviously be a lesser bad evil. But nonetheless, I can agree, that would also be an addiction. However, addiction, by definition, means something bad, okay? Something harmful. So the real question is, can you choose to live a good life? Can you choose to not harm yourself? Is that possible? That is the real question. And if the answer is yes, even on a theoretical level, then it's not true that everyone is addicted to something. Then there are people who are not addicted to anything. We are naturally set to be in a very, very high state, full of joy, full of attractiveness. If that's what you're into, it's full of it's just like awesomeness, right? You're just going to be awesome if you let go of bad habits. That's all you need to understand. That's the secret of life, right? It's as stupid as it seems. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to take on activities. You don't even have to go to the gym. It's not even that important. What's important is just that you detox your whole life. And then you learn to cope with the sort of the cravings and the desires for these things. This is your old self seeking refuge in these things, because real life, actual life, is actually a bit uncomfortable the first couple of days. It takes a couple of days to get used to real life. It's a little bit uncomfortable. Obviously, there's the withdrawals as well, but through meditation, all of these things, all of these challenges become very, very insignificant. In fact, even on a day like today, when I feel a 6 out of 10 and I'm like, oh, life is so terrible. And I'm like, wait, I am only saying that because I'm comparing myself to all these days before when I felt amazing, when I felt like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. So why do I use that word terrible? Terrible is like 3 out of 10. What am I even talking about? I became more conscious. I started meditating, and then I realized that, hey, even me considering that this is like a bad day, that is just a natural feedback from my mind. My mind is actually just helping me out. My mind is just saying, hey, you know what? The sugar you ate yesterday, you gave yourself permission so that even though it's still once a year, it's probably still not even worth it. It's just my mind helping me out. There's no harm in that. And the moment I accepted the message, the moment I was like, okay, cool. Even a little bit of sugar once a year is still too much for me. Yeah, I mean, you can do what you want. But I did that. I accepted the message. And the moment I did, that energy field, you know, when you feel a certain way and the thoughts kind of linger around, that just dissipated. I got the message. You have to become friends with your subconscious mind. You can send messages to your subconscious mind. You've maybe read about law of attraction, when you visualize yourself having a certain life or having a certain physique. Now this goes into your higher intelligence. That higher intelligence figures out the details of giving you the right impulses, of giving you the right dopamine, of giving you the right sensations in your body to make you act accordingly to your goals and your visualizations. And it also works the other way around. So your subconscious mind, understanding what it is you're trying to do in your life, is also going to give you feedback, responses, messages. And they don't necessarily come from the divine or whatever, they're just coming from your subconscious a lot of the time. And by being in this constant relationship with it, and especially when you're dreaming, so when you wake up in the morning, I heard a really good advice from Andrew Huberman, who said that when you wake up in the morning, that first hour, at all costs, avoid any technology, because there is an hour, there's a little window after you wake up where you process and consolidate all the processing that has been happening during your sleep, right? So all the dreams and all that, it is being processed unconsciously while you're dreaming, but then when you wake up, you get a chance to consciously process all these things in your waking state. And that's very, very valuable. So that is your subconscious mind helping you out. The subconscious mind is figuring out different traumas, different attachments you have to different things, and maybe some lacks in confidence or whatever, and is giving you all these scenarios while you're dreaming. And then from there you can process these things, and you become better. Basically, you become better. Your subconscious is trying to help you improve. Yeah, so it's it's not just a random mechanism that is just throwing out random scenarios and weird dreams. No, they usually have a purpose. They're usually trying to tell you something, and you should spend your mornings trying to process these things. Now, when you're taking drugs, you're limiting your REM sleep quite significantly. In fact, there are studies showing that caffeine alone, I'm not talking about these 10 other things that people do on a regular basis, but caffeine alone is going to mostly deteriorate your REM sleep, like to a point where you can't even remember what you were dreaming. I know that marijuana does the same thing. Alcohol has a tendency to kill REM in the beginning of the night, and then in the end of the night you get a lot of REM, so I guess it takes like maybe half of it away. So that's a limited life. That's not a life worth living, right? It's not a life worth living if you're not examining it, right? Socrates was right about this. We need to examine our life. What are you really doing if you're living on this earth and years are going by but you're staying the same? What are you really doing? You're not growing wiser with age. And when we're talking to older people, we should expect them to be wiser than us, for the simple fact that they've had an infinite amount more days to do all these things that we're talking about here, to go through all their processing, to learn from their mistakes, to practice consciousness, to practice meditation, to practice letting go, to expand their awareness, to see all these things for what they really are and not for what the majority considers them to be. Obviously, a big part of letting go, a big part of that attachment we have, is that everyone does it. Why do people, on average, say that caffeine is one of the hardest things to quit, and smoking as well? Like, on a physical level, these two, nicotine and caffeine, are probably the easiest to quit, right? It's just that everyone does them. I assure you that you don't want to be addicted to something like benzodiazepines or something even tougher than that. That's hard to quit, okay? That is a physical addiction. That is something that if you quit it, it can actually cause serious harm to you, okay? It's actually very, very painful to quit these substances. But nicotine and caffeine are not painful to quit in themselves. You have a headache for 2 days, okay? Get over yourself. The reason why people say they're hard to quit has to do with the fact that everyone does them, right? They're available. But more than that, they are part of the collective unconscious mind as an acceptable thing. And that can be a little bit hard to break out of, like, because this paradigm is this group mentality. It's like, imagine that you're an ant that is trying to break free from the ant colony, and you're trying to go your own way. That is hard to do. That is a big challenge. Ideally, that's what every single ant should be doing, right? So obviously humans are not ants. We actually have that capacity. And we should utilize that because uniqueness, originality, creativity, all these things that are unique to you, that will never ever be replicated in any other human being. You will never find the same DNA twice on this earth in 1,000,000,000,000 years. And you have to bring that out to the world. You have to show that. You have to offer it. You have to be that amazing you that you are. The more of all these things you let go, all these toxins, all these negative beliefs, the more you become, which is the ultimate aim of life. It's not for you to add more things, to add charisma, to add confidence, to add good posture, to add alluring eye contact. It's none of those things. It's just removing all these things that you don't need. That's all you have to focus on. The goal that everyone is missing is that life is not about adding things. It's just about removing things. You can literally just remove these things that I just mentioned. Sugar, drugs, scrolling mindlessly, marijuana, gaming, attachment, adult media content, drinking, smoking, pills, caffeine, whatever it is that you're struggling with the most is usually the mothership of all these things. So you don't have to look at it as you having to quit all these things. Well, you could. That's another perspective. You can say that you just want to live a good life. And if you examine what that is, you will find out that that is actually the same thing. It's just letting go of all these things that are harmful for you, right? Because a good life, harmful, not really congruent. However, there is this mothership, there is this thing that is anchoring all these things together. If you let go of that, usually that can help you realize that addiction is not something that you have to a particular substance. Because the moment you let go of that thing that you think is your ultimate addiction, the one that is bigger than all of them, you notice how you suddenly become more addicted to something else that you weren't that addicted to in the first place. And once you become aware of that mechanism, you learn, okay, so it's not that I'm addicted to certain things, it's that addiction just wants something to be addicted to. Now, what happens if I observe this addiction, right? What happens if I observe this entity inside of me that is addicted, and I observe the thoughts and the cravings and the sensations? So what happens when I'm just observing these thoughts and I'm just letting them be? Well, what happens is they dissipate, they dissolve. And then you're like, well, so what? So that entity, like this person inside of me that craved all these things, that can just disappear and then reappear every once in a while. Well, and at the same time, my life goes on. So who am I really? Am I this person that comes and go, or am I the person who's always there and witnessing this craving coming and going? Well, obviously it's the latter. You are the one who's always there. Now, if you are the one who's always there, then what's the problem? How does your life feel in those periods where the cravings are not there? Chances are your life is pretty good. Obviously, there is the withdrawal phase to consider, right? So let's be real. When you quit, you're maybe going to drop a couple of points. You might, for a period, go to a 3 out of 5. You might, for a period, go from a 5 out of 10 to a 3 out of 10. And you might consider that, okay, now something is wrong. There's something, I'm getting depressed. I get uncomfortable now. I have to go back to my old ways. This is too painful. This is too much suffering. I can't handle this. I need my drugs. I need to occupy my mind with something. My mind is craving the stimulants so much that I can't control myself. Well, all those thoughts. So it's just this old self that is really strong in the beginning. And then as time goes on, it weakens and weakens and weakens and weakens. And eventually, and this is why people give into their addictions later on, is because eventually this old self, this craving, becomes so minuscule that you're only really witnessing it like maybe a couple of times per week. And sometimes it strikes you on a bad day, and then when that combo happens, you have a bad day and you have this craving out of nowhere, you misinterpret that as your own thought, as your own self. And then you give into your addiction, you give into the mothership, and now this old self, this craving mechanism, it grows stronger and bigger and bigger and bigger again, to the point where you now become identified with this entity again, and now you believe that you are the one addicted, when addiction just exists inside of you. So the way we formulate these words, the way we construct these sentences is very important, because as I said earlier, the subconscious mind is hearing everything you say. So when you say, I am addicted, the subconscious mind is just going, cool, yeah, you are addicted. What do addicted people do? They give into their addictions, they're compulsive, they are irrational, they let go of their dreams and their ambitions. So we're going to give you all these things that come with being addicted, because you said it yourself, you said you're addicted. We're just trying to help you out. We're just here to serve you. We don't know what's right and wrong. We don't know how to navigate this world. We're living completely blindfolded as a mechanism that is serving you achieve whatever you want. You are the captain of your ship. So set the course right, and you can say instead, addiction comes into me. Yeah, so now you've created a third party dynamic between you and the addiction. You've disidentified from it. And if you learn this over time, you learn to use the words right, you learn to construct sentences in the right way. And with that, your life improves. So to answer your question, is life boring without drugs? Is life boring without bad vices? Let me say it like this: life is miserable with these things. Once you've tried, you realize it's miserable. The way to do it is to let go of your mind, the identification with that craving mind, that old self. And you are perfectly fine without it. Life still goes on, you're still you, nothing is lost. If anything, you're much, much better now. It's one of the greatest myths of this world that we need the mind, that the mind has value to us as personalities. There is nothing more obnoxious than people who are identified with personalities. When you see conflict, when you see drama, when you see arguments, when you see gossiping, when you see all these nasty human traits, they're all products of the mind. People who have awareness, people who have disidentified from the mind, they don't have any of that. And to the craving self, to the old addicted self, meeting these people can be a little bit of a trigger point, right? Because it puts their existence in jeopardy. The same party I'm talking about yesterday. Obviously, the conversation, the eyes went to me at some point. Why is this guy not drinking alcohol like the rest of us? He's not even drinking caffeine. I started talking, and then suddenly everyone starts fighting with each other a little bit. People started leaving the party, and then a couple of people left. And I thought, that's very, very interesting. No one is blaming me for the conflict. All I said was like, I don't do that, I don't do this, I don't believe it's good to do. Like, as diplomatic as possible. And the moment I said it, I created this friction. So there is the old self in each one of us. And whenever you're in a group, it creates a collective entity, a group entity for the time being. Just like a country has a group entity, just like a sports team can have a group entity. The same thing happens in a party when people get together. Now, if one of them is not participating in this play of being identified to this self, and that splits the group, creates disruption. Now suddenly a lot of unprocessed things start arising in each one of these people. And just like the old self can pull the old self out from other people, the true self, your true nature, your meditative present state can also pull the presence out of other people. So now we have two forces, or rather a power. Your true self is a power, it's not forcing anything, and a force, and now they're conflicting. Obviously, it's just the forces that are conflicting among each other. They are creating more and more havoc. The power, the present self, is just being there. In the beginning, you might get tempted to believe what they're saying, right? Because you haven't yet realized that what they're saying is not really their own words. It's just a product of their addictions, of their craving speaking for them. You know, it's crazy to see your loved ones not speak from their hearts, but to speak from their addictive minds, and actually being upset about you not being addicted as well. So it seems. But as time goes on and you observe this more and more, you learn to just have fun with it, right? It's almost entertainment in itself to just come to a place of people, not say any word, just be there, just smile and nod at everyone, and before long, the attention comes to you, right? And it doesn't even matter what they're asking, because it's the old self noticing that something is wrong. You know, through the small gestures that you're not doing, the fact that you're not participating in certain gossipy topics, the fact that you're not smiling at certain jokes that are not being very friendly, the fact that you're not doing all these common things, the minds in other people notice that right away. Before you consciously process that you notice it, the mind notices that something is up. What is that person? What's up with them? Let's find out. Oh, it's because they're not consuming these drugs that we're all consuming. Maybe they should have a little bit of cake. Maybe we should pour them some alcohol, because every once in a while it's okay, right? Or whatever they say. Okay, so it's not that. Oh, maybe they're a religious person. Oh, okay. Maybe we can write them off as some crazy fanatic. Okay, it's not that either. What are they? What do they do for a living? Okay, they're not really like set in stone with their profession like that. They're not that focused on their careers. They don't really have a label. And slowly the minds just start losing it, because they need labels. The mind needs to label everything. Notice this for yourself. Try to take a couple of deep breaths. Observe your own mind, and then look around. Look at another object than the one you're looking at right now. If I look at something, my mind just instantly just puts a name on that. Now, when the mind cannot do that, the mind loses it. Quite literally, you lose the mind. The mind cannot function without it. The mind needs to measure everything. The mind loves logical deductions. The mind loves contemplation. The mind loves focusing on different things. But when you lose the focus points, when you just become an observer of everything with no labeling, which are actually just judgments, you lose the mind in a good way, meaning that you become free, you become an actually sane person, and you can just focus on that. Nothing else. Forget about the addictions, forget about all the hassle and all the struggle. If you just focus on increasing your awareness. As time goes by, you will just naturally lose interest in all these things because you're losing interest in the mind, the negative mind, the craving mind, the desirous mind, the prideful mind, the lower states of consciousness. Once you lose interest in these things, you realize that all these substances, all these drugs, they're pulling you down. They're making your life worse. The only bridge you have to cross ever is the acute and the post-acute withdrawals of whatever substances you have to go through. And even then, if you practice meditation, if you practice acceptance for what is, if you accept that you can't change the past, you can't go back in time and undo these things. You are where you are right now. Accept it. Okay, I can't change that. Regrets, they don't really serve me. I'm just here right now. I can only look forward. You make that acceptance, that already puts you a couple of points up on the joy scale.